With Monster Hunter Wilds mere hours away, what with me not having been able to record for the last week, I thought it would be an interesting idea to set my favourite monsters in stone, just to see how much the new monsters in Wilds will blow me away. Or indeed, how much the returners have been updated. A bit of background on my short history with the Monster Hunter franchise. I was a Fiverr baby who liked the gameplay loop of Monster Hunter World so much, I went back and played Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate and Monster Hunter Rise. And whilst I've found myself enjoying Generations far more than I did Rise, I'm not a savant when it comes to this franchise. So, whilst we're all in the queue for Monster Hunter Wilds, my name is Flying Scott. I don't like to waste your time, and here are my top 10 favourite monsters in the mainline Monster Hunter games. Monster Hunter Rise is funny. Its original monsters based on yokai are some of the most creative yet seen in the franchise, yet they don't get to shine as much because the game puts more emphasis on you, the hunter. As a result, most fights in Rise are over before they've even started, as you're overly equipped to deal with these lizards that God certainly did not make in his image. Rise also has a quirk, for lack of better words, of its lizards looking very mammalian. This fish lizard has a flat human face and hair-like fins. This raptor has eyebrows and a full coat of fur, and this is just a straight up farting samurai tiger. Funny that the best monster to come out of Rise is actually a mammal though. And it uses weapons! Gosharag is exactly what the Fanged Beast classification needed. A bear which is just so sick of your nonsense that it makes itself ice blades to try and end you with. These blades allow it to hit like an aggressive greatsword for a few hits before they break under the pressure of its own attacks. Owing to being in Rise, Goss is still not a very hard fight, but makes up for the lack of difficulty by being a bear which is not a starter monster! So many mammals in this franchise are just punching bags, and out comes Rise with its creepy ogre finger bear, and puts it in the same league as Rathalos, the primary wyvern that is in every game! I hope Goss becomes a regular in this franchise, I really do, because a fight this good being gamed by it being almost an afterthought in the game it was introduced in order to give bloody Somnicanth a subspecies, is a crime. Paddington deserves better. In Monster Hunter, the classification of Elder Dragon is there mostly to cover any and all bases when it comes to obviously fantastical creatures. You have Kirin, which is a reptilian unicorn, then there's Fatalis, which is just the concept of the word dragon, and then you have more nonsensical stuff like Valstrax and Kushala Daora, which are a jet engine dragon and a dragon whose wings are hurricanes respectively. And whilst I'm actually quite fond of Kushala, it has a really cool design and the lore that its hide is actual metal, it is let down by an already gimmicky fight not being very well designed in Monster Hunter World. There's another dragon in Monster Hunter World whose hide is covered in steel though. And he doesn't have a gimmick at all. He just gives you a slap. The Extinction Dragon. The Extinction Dragon? And all he does is punch you? It was not love at first sight between me and Nergigante though. I like to think of myself as a hunting horn main, so when I first encountered Nerg, he had the habit of just interrupting my ditties. But once you realise the only way to keep this hedgehog thing in check is to meet his aggression with your own, his fight becomes a cakewalk. And the best thing about it, he doesn't zoom around the arena for you to do so. He would rather destroy his own nest than let you live. He fights like they gave a bear wings and porcupine quills, and although he's a little easy... Seriously, it is common practice to bully Runa Nergigante for one of its drops. He has all the right to be hyped up as the Eater of Elders. But can he beat Fatalis though? In general, I'm not wild on Elder Dragons. Their fights tend to lean on them zipping around, denying you the opportunity to get to them through area of effect attack spam. Not very fun. And they all do this. Fatalis, Teostra, Alatreon, Nergigante doesn't do this, which is why I love him. There is, however, an Elder Dragon which does do this. But she does it in a funny way. Of course, my favourite elder dragon that doesn't have a hide made of steel is the one that is a fish. Namael is tucked away towards the end of the Monster Hunter World Iceborne storyline, appearing in one hunt and then promptly never being mentioned again. More before, actually. Apart from being the perfect blend of beautiful and Namael has a really fun premise. As you fight her, she leaves these wee puddles of water around. They don't damage you, or even slow you down, so they're not really a big hazard through the first half, 1/3 of the fight. Their importance comes later. You see, dear viewer, other than the more obvious cues taken from seahorses, Namael is based on another aquatic animal. A jellyfish. And pray tell, what are jellyfish known for again? Well, there's the not having any bones, they wash up ashore a lot, and the common misconception that they emit electric pulses. Oh, I see. Despite only having appeared in one game, Namael has already become the bona fide elder dragon for the water element, but to me, I just like a dragon whose entire game plan is giving you the old toaster in the bathtub. She must have dreamed of chronic and sustained cruelty. The Flying Wyvern is arguably Monster Hunter's signature monster category. The two most recognisable designs from the franchise both come from this category, and the final story boss of the very first game was also a Flying Wyvern. The poster child for this classification, and indeed the whole of Monster Hunter, is of course Rathalos, who has appeared in all major promotional material and is even a boss fight in Smash Bros. Ultimate. Which is cool, but like, his wife is such a better monster. Rathian is everything a monster and its, in her case, her subspecies should be for me. Simple to understand weak spots, a signature attack which only gets more extra as her variants get more difficult, hardly any unfair attacks, and a well-established role within the franchise. Usually the very first actual Flying Wyvern thing you're coming up against. Special mention of course goes to Gold Rathian, who actually has a threatening fireball attack, as well as being really fun to fight with Lance. She's the only monster across the games I've played where I've actively set out to farm her, as either her gear or her weapons are really useful in the mid-game. Rathian also has the unofficial title of an enhanced training dummy, as her attacks are so fair and so well telegraphed that she's the monster you're advised to go up against with a weapon you're unfamiliar with. A good mother is a good teacher. Now hand over the source spikes. Oh, now the list is getting interesting. Now we're getting into the tiers where I wouldn't even consider swapping the monsters out unless Wilds absolutely blows my socks away. This land of wyverns, giant insects and fanged beasts might be ruled by elder dragons and otherwise dominated by the wraths, but I cannot begin to describe my reaction when I was told the creature that instills fear into even their hearts wasn't even remotely dragon-shaped. Instead, it was a very angry baboon. Monkey! 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 If I want to fight to comfortably keep me on my toes, I always join a Rajang SOS. Some monsters force you to be aggressive. Some force you to wait out the opportune moment to strike. Big Baboon Boy over here sits perfectly in the middle. If he gets to jump on you, you're basically done for, especially if he decides to follow up with a charge as you're running away. But if you catch him as he recovers from a body press or a laser beam, you can reliably pull off some good combos, as Rajang, the poor sod, just does not know what to do anymore. Owing to his small size, despite being about the size of a real-world elephant, there's really no bad place to hit Rajang, so a fight with him is mostly about how comfortable you are approaching him. Some might think Rajang is overhyped and needs to sit Wilds out, but honestly, my first time entering a save zone with two separate entrances, only to find Rajang having run all the way around the map to await me exiting on the other side, convinced me that Capcom should let Rajang run amok. Yeah. Also, the straight up murder jazz that plays as you fight him in World is a better theme song than either Zanogre or Muzitsune, and the official community ranking is just wrong. This has been my TED Talk. The term wyvern is stretched very thin throughout the Monster Hunter franchise. You've got the flying wyverns, which are flying wyverns, but then you have the piscine, bird and brute wyverns. And sure, they all still just have 4 limbs, but is Malfastio really just a bird-shaped dragon? Brute wyverns in turn, theropod dinosaurs. No, I won't have any of this, but their wings have evolved into useless forelimbs. They're designed to be dinosaurs first and dragons after. Devil Joe is actually just Godzilla, and Brachydios is just, hey, what if we gave a T-Rex hands and give it one of those stupid pompadours the Japanese are convinced signals he means business? What I really mean to say with all of this is, why did it take 2 full generations of Monster Hunter until Capcom just actually made a straight up dinosaur? Despite only showing up in the 5th generation after brute wyverns were introduced in the 3rd, Anjanath is the perfect brute. Not hyper powerful, yet no slouch either. Anjanath was your first test of your competence at the game when he debuted in Monster Hunter World. Meanwhile, in Monster Hunter World Iceborne and in Monster Hunter Rise, it was a mid-game threat who could very competently send you back to the hub if you approached it like it was the same Act 1 boss. Anjanath reveals itself not to be just a T-Rex as the fight progresses though. First it unfurls these sails on its back, then its nose pops inside out as it gets angry, and then it starts sneezing fire! Whilst the regular Anjanath is at home in swampy forest, arid deserts and volcanoes, the vulgar Anjanath occupies basically everywhere else. The T in T-Rex stands for taser. Anjanath sells itself really well as a real animal too. Its weaponry grows stronger as it gets more agitated, growling at you with these boar grunts and donkey cries, but then it runs for its life on its last legs and it whines like a beaten dog. There was no need for that, Capcom. As you were. As a rule of thumb, I like monsters which are just mad at you for no reason. The games prior to World didn't show this off very well, with the monsters attacking you the second you spotted them, but World and Rise opened the door for lack of better words, patience from the monster's end. Rise did, however, bring back a monster who has no entitlement to patience. Your first encounter with an Astalos is one of those things you know was specifically engineered to just instill that pure reaction of "Holy shit, what the fuck is that?" You're just told to bring a wyvern egg back to camp. Sure, the quest description did mention you might meet an angry mother wyvern, but if you know anything about this franchise, that usually means Rathian. And by that point, if you've come from another game, you've already hunted a fair amount of those. So then you enter the zone where the eggs are and... that's not a Rathian! And then Astalos wakes up and punches you across the arena because you're severely underleveled, and then you die, and they have to restart the quest, and then it just becomes very sad. But that's just it, isn't it? In a franchise where the big scary dragons will try to eat you, set you on fire, or gore you with their horns, Astalos just punches you. His title is the Thunderclaw Wyvern, and those claws are the most prominent weapons he has. This neatly works into the part breaks with Astalos. They actually matter. Breaking those glowing green parts means Astalos has to calm down a bit as, whoops, now he can't contain as much thunder energy anymore. Astalos returned in Sunbreak, but in Generations Astalos has this energy, and I was so upset Wilds came up with a new Thunder Flying Wyvern, because that means Astalos won't get to wreck house as an invader from launch. Ray who? 6 out of 10. Not enough punching. Monster Hunter fans love a confident monster. Think about it. The 2 most popular monsters in this franchise are Zenogre and Nergigante, and only one of those choices is wrong. Confident monsters also tend to get a lot of turf wars. Look at Uragaran, Anjanath or Rajan. Turf wars, of course, being introduced in 5th gen to establish the roles of 2 particular monsters in any given ecosystem. So it's funny that 5th gen also introduced a confident monster who has no need for turf wars. Although Nergigante is the 2nd most popular monster, no monster has ingrained itself as a series staple as quickly as Basilgeuse. Basilgeuse works off a simple premise. You're fighting another monster. Suddenly a siren goes off as a shadow is cast over the battlefield. And next thing you know... If you were to tell me the funny dragon hunting game had carpet bombing as a mechanic, I wouldn't have believed you. Meanwhile, Basil, the largest of the true flying wyverns, does it multiple times a hunt, and does a better job at being the explode and retreat monster than Brachydios. I always find minefield area of effect spamming monsters very annoying and a chore to fight. Meanwhile, whenever I see Basil on the map, I wish for it to pop over as I'm hunting something else. The fact everyone has a story about their unexpected first encounter with a Basilgeuse, despite there not being a hard-coded scenario for Basil to introduce itself, should say enough. Also, the B-52 Bomber Wyvern landed on number 52 on the monster popularity poll. You couldn't make it up. Capcom not having teased Basilgeuse before either of his appearances makes me so hopeful for his return in Wilds, and I just have a feeling he's genuinely going to be there, restored to his chaos reaping glory. Keep his nuke though. What sucked me into Monster Hunter World was it feeling like a coherent world. I had sunk quite some time into Dauntless, perhaps the largest competitor to Monster Hunter, prior to it fucking itself over. But Dauntless had turned itself into more of a monster cage fighter. Base Monster Hunter World had such a well-established hierarchy with the introduction of turf wars, but it has basically always been there. At the bottom of the pyramid there are the small monsters and the herbivores, and then there's the apexes who actually rule the locales. Rathalos mainly for forests, Gravios for volcanoes, Lagiacrus for coastal areas, the Bloss Wyverns are the tyrants of the desert. They hate you, they hate other monsters, hell, they hate each other. Large, ill-tempered and well-armoured, these vicious-looking beasts are actually herbivores. Their fights are remarkably simple. They charge at you, and after coming to a halt they try to bludgeon you before charging again, with their signature attacks seeing them burrowing into the soil to try and gore you from below. Monoblos and Diabolos are heavily based on Styracosaurus and Triceratops respectively, and their fights are more or less the same, so I can't reliably say I prefer one over the other. Monoblos out here is looking more vicious, but then there's Bloodbath Diabolos, which has the lore. Diabolos specifically is a cactus specialist, so there's massive amount of copium coming from my end when I noticed there are no cactus patches in the designated desert map for Monster Hunter Wilds. Meanwhile, we don't have a confirmed diet for Monoblos. Monoblos hasn't appeared since Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, so there are definitely more monsters who haven't been in the spotlight for longer. And whilst I haven't even fought it myself, I hope Monoblos will be a multiplayer fight over in the Forbidden Lands. Imagine it going apeshit at Gypsyros. Honourable mentions. Legiana. For much the same reason as I like Kushala Daora, Legiana has mastered the wind and is almost like a giant wing drake in that most of its body is devoted to wings. However, sometimes Legiana just refuses to land, and as someone who mostly plays Hunting Horn and Charge Blade, that does get tired. Baroth and Banbaro. In Monster Hunter World, these two are just chill guys trying to live their day-to-day lives. Baroth will roll around in the mud and Banbaro will sit in hot springs, and neither will pay you much mind, unless you are currently fighting something in their vicinity. Also, Banbaro is straight up a deer, and those are found basically everywhere on Earth. Stop moaning he is in too many locales. Barioth. Although I have some choice words to say about Barioth's design, its pouncing off of walls and throwing itself bodily at you in a well-telegraphed yet speedy fashion makes me really respect this monster. Frostfang is a really good fight too, but both are brought down by being ice monsters. Nargacuga. Here's a monster I don't enjoy fighting, but I have deep respect for. When he's not a Master Rank exclusive or about as slow as Basarios, he hits fast but not hard. A monster designed not to make you too comfortable by its sheer agility. I wished we had more monsters like it. Gammoth. There is just something awe-inspiring about Gammoth. It's just a shame her fight boils down to you slashing at her gut and hind legs, as she is still telegraphing an attack for where you were during the previous hunt. Seregios. Seregios screams bespoke monster. Before Arkveld came into view, Seregios had animations only its rig used. Much like Nargacuga, Seregios is not a fight meant to make you get comfortable through its sheer agility, though as a result, the zoomies do get a bit tiring. In a world of commanders, warriors, knights, kings and queens, only one stands tall to even them. Where man and Wyverian have come to fight nature with heavy weaponry, nature already had a monster with such adaptations waiting deep within the Jurassic frontier. And nature means greatsword, baby! Glavenus is a monster that wears its identity on its sleeve. It's red, so it's most likely a fire monster, and it has a very long tail with a visibly bladed edge to it. Just watching Glavenus perform its signature tail slam tells you everything you need to know about fighting one. All of Glavenus' attacks feel like the monster has put some thought into how it wanted to take you down. Hunter a long way away from you? Jump towards them and try to flatter them with the tail slam. Tail has gotten dull? Sharpen it, of course. Hunter closing in? Lay down some explosive rust and reposition yourself with a side hop. Basically, Glavenus fights like a hunter. And where base Glavenus can keep you on your toes, in either Generations or World exclusive acidic Glavenus is a different fight entirely. Notice how it holds its bladed tail in front of itself at all times? Yeah, it's more about stabbing and light swings to the side in place of the base form's affinity for slashing and roundhouse tackles.
I wonder why.
I will remain convinced that there are few things as satisfying as either parrying or guard pointing or simply just landing a stunning hit on a Glavenus right as it does a roundhouse slash, resulting in it tumbling to the ground. Oh yeah, have I neglected to mention that
the devs consider Glavenus capable of one-shotting Devil Joe?
A brute wyvern that displays power, intelligence and cunning makes Glavenus not only an awesome theropod, but puts it up there with Smaug and Vermithrax among the best dragons ever. Chemistry seemingly does steal a bit of Glavenus' thunder, but there can be only one red-hot tail sweeper. And if speculation for the Wilds title updates turns out to be accurate, there's a real chance we will be able to see Glavenus humble the Firecock in the Windward Plains. But until that happens, thus has been Flying Scott, and by order of the guild, happy hunting. Thank you very much for watching.